Hello everyone, our guest today is Obianuju Ekeocha, the founder of Culture of Life Africa, an organisation dedicated to the preservation and promotion of a pro-life culture in Africa. Her work includes mobilising efforts to improve maternal healthcare services for women in Africa, while at the same time fighting against the scandal of Western governments making their support for African countries conditional on them agreeing to population control and abortion, something our guest very appropriately describes as ideological colonisation. But thanks to her, the truth of what is happening is being exposed. She is a truly formidable woman and a wonderfully articulate advocate for the right to life in Africa and throughout the world. It is a great honour to introduce today Obianuju Ekeocha. We're delighted to have you with us here today, Uju. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And delighted to hear about your work. It's true, I think it's fair to say that Western countries have been to the forefront of pushing abortion and population control on developing countries. Can you tell us a little bit about that and who's at the forefront of that and what's happening?
And this is the scandal of the 21st century. I think at a time like this when everybody's talking about, loving the Black people, the Black Lives Matter and all of that. But behind the scenes, unbeknownst to most people around the world, especially in the Western world, a lot of the Western countries who are approaching African countries pretending or claiming that they're coming to be stakeholders, coming to help and partner in the work of development. And yet at the same time, they are asking for these cultural changes, these cultural things like, abortion, contraception, the comprehensive sexuality education. And who is at the forefront of it, as you ask? It's mostly a lot of the European countries. The United States at this time is now a major player, since the new administration, unfortunately. So they have been pushing the African countries. They have been pushing for some of these things that we've seen as battlefronts in Western countries. So particularly, issues like abortion, where in the Western countries, these have been quite contested in the different countries. Then they come to African countries and try to get us to legalize abortion, and they are offering it at the same time as they're offering aid. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And it's very, very difficult for the African leaders, I must say, to resist this, because we are very much in need of the aid, but then as we are accepting the aid, at the same time, we are also having to accept some of these other ideological things. So this is why I always talk about, ideological neocolonialism, cultural imperialism, and it's coming from Western countries, from across the Western world.
Absolutely, and it's really disturbing to think that aid is conditional, on accepting these things. Tell us a little bit about the role, because of course here in Ireland we've had abortion introduced in recent years, in the last few years. Has Ireland had a role in terms of travelling to these conferences? And we know that the taxpayer here funds the Ireland aid overseas. I'm not sure how much people are aware of where that money goes to. But can you tell us a little bit about what Ireland's role has been in terms of pushing abortion on the developing world?
Yeah, with Ireland, it has been very sad, I must tell you, Eilís. Why? Because before all of this started happening, you must understand from the African perspective, Ireland has been a very highly respected Western voice, particularly because of the missionary work they had done in most of the African countries. Unlike many other Western countries, the Irish, for the Africans, were seen as the perfect moral voice. I mean, most of us received our churches and the gospel through Irish missionaries. So then you turn to 2018 when you had your referendum, and then 2019 when the result of your referendum went into play and abortion became a legalized thing in the Republic of Ireland. Imagine the effect it then had on the Africans. So we had a conference, the ICPD, International Conference on Population and Development, which is a major UN event, which was hosted in 2019 before COVID in Nairobi, Kenya. So that particular year, from your point of view as an Irish person, 2019, what it is the first year when you had your legalized abortion come into play, that Ireland sent a huge delegation of senators who came to the ICPD, guns blazing, telling the world about how they were successful in the referendum in Ireland, talking about abortion like it's one good step that was taken in Ireland. But imagine the Africans who, for us, the Irish people are, the moral voices, and then they're now the ones coming to the ICPD telling us about abortion. Some of your senators were telling our African politicians to leave the old ways. This is how Ireland has progressed. This is the way Ireland has gone, and this also can happen in your country, or it should happen in your country. So it's very, very unfortunate.
It's very interesting because I'm sure so many people are completely unaware of that, or
Yes.
unaware of the presence of Irish politicians at that event, talking about our referendum and pushing that, as you say, the ideological colonisation.
Yeah.
What are groups like your group, Culture of Life Africa, doing to try and address this, to try and pull it back? Is it educating people? What are the plans, or what are the strategy to try and make a difference?
It has been an uphill battle, because it's not just for Culture of Life Africa. There are many, many other wonderful pro-life organizations across the African continent. Mind you, Africa is an entire continent. So in the various African countries, people are making grassroots efforts, trying to tell people, do not buy this. This is what has happened in the West, that even abortion is not even settled in the West. Unfortunately, those who are the loudest, those who are the most sleek, the coolest, if you like, the ones who are most funded are the abortion lobby and the abortion movement coming from the West. And so this is what we see, and this is what we're bombarded with in the African countries. So organizations like Culture of Life Africa and many other organizations, pro-life organizations, are telling people that, we're going to debunk this, that we are trying to find out exactly what is being done in the West in order for us to show that abortion, even in Western countries, has been problematic, the problems that happens in the various Western countries, and the fact that it's not all that it's promised to be. So it's mostly in education. And we are always still very much challenged, because it's like a battle between David and Goliath, that who we are standing in opposition to are the powerful Western politicians. It's the international organizations like the United Nations agencies. It is, the large media. And when I talk about media, I'm not talking about a little African country national medias. I am talking about the BBCs, the CNNs, everything coming from the international world at this moment with the fall of Ireland is coming with the promotion of abortion. So our work is really kind of to educate people and try to get their mindset still strengthened on the African values of life, but it's still a very, very difficult battle, because our opponents are much bigger than we are.
100%. And I think, we've had that experience ourselves, very much so, with trying to get the information to people when you're dealing with a media narrative. And that's been a huge struggle for Ireland and many countries across the world in terms of trying to get the pro-life issue out there. What do you think people can do? I mean, there's the viewers of this program today. If you were to say what you could do to try and change things, what can pro-life activists do in Ireland and across Europe to try and make a difference? I mean, I know we always talk about, getting involved in politics, electing good politicians. What's your view on that?
It's first and foremost for people to realize the fact that, in as much as I'm talking about this from the African perspective, from the international perspective, that the single Irish pro-life activist or pro-life person, or even just an ordinary individual, should know that this concerns you, that this is, I know the local politics is always very difficult and always, very overwhelming for people who are in a particular country like Ireland. But it is actually your business if your country is then sending money overseas and using the money instead of using the money for good things, for proper development work, they're using it for the lobbying of abortion. That the single Irish person or the ordinary Irish person should know that getting involved, first of all, getting your government to be more clear and transparent as to how they use your overseas aid budget, trying to find out exactly the representation that your politicians are making of Ireland outside of your country, like when they went to the ICPD and they were talking about Ireland. Most Irish people didn't know that. Some of us Africans, it's hard to connect and see where they are coming from. Even the people that they are representing, they're not really representing the voice of everyone in their own locales. So, but people should know what your politicians are doing, electing the right politicians, making sure to hold them accountable, making sure also that the overseas funding that they spend is spent on right things and the things that are not, that are kind of more in line with the African culture, with the African values, and of course in other parts of the developing world.
Absolutely, and it's really important to get that information out there, I think, and ask those really pertinent questions about the funding and the taxpayer money and where it's going and how it's been spent in developing countries. Let's talk a little bit about maternal healthcare, because very much in Africa, it's very much used as they promote abortion on the basis that women will die in childbirth, that's why abortion is needed. We saw that very much here in Ireland before the referendum to repeal the Eighth Amendment. The argument was that abortion was needed to save women's lives, even though Ireland always had extremely low maternal mortality rate and had an excellent record in maternal care. Do you think that's one of the reasons, just from your own work on a UN level internationally, do you think that's one of the reasons why the pro-abortion campaigners were so keen to see abortion in Ireland, because we had this excellent maternal care and we had protection of unborn life in the womb?
Exactly. That Ireland, before the legalization of abortion in the Republic of Ireland, had even better maternal health outcomes than a wealthier country like the United Kingdom that had abortion, and even people were going from Ireland supposedly to the UK for abortions. But still, your maternal health care in the Republic of Ireland was excellent. So that really reflected the point that what women need is excellent healthcare, is the benefit of the advancement of healthcare. So now they are taking the exact same argument that really didn't hold, any sway here in Ireland, wasn't represented by facts or any kind of statistics or real details, because the statistics were showing the right opposite. They're taking it to African countries where they know that we have this disadvantage, that our healthcare systems are kind of run down, we have a lot of inadequacies, and as such, we are in such a vulnerable position, especially with regards to something like maternal health care or, maternal mortality. And they're telling us all you have to do is to legalize abortion and then women can stop dying. But then we can still see, when you look into any of the available data, that when women die, in African countries, it's usually because of excessive bleeding. We don't even have, national blood service, the kind of adequate national blood services to cover the needs of the women in most of these African countries. We are having issues with very basic needs, like the availability of water in hospitals and around healthcare facilities in the various African countries. There are places where you go and you won't even find clean drinking water. So of course, women could die following childbirth from just basic or minor infections, because you don't have the water services or the water sanitation. You don't have the right antibiotics. We don't have even the availability of healthcare professionals to take care of people. That there are places and parts of the African continent where you have one healthcare professional, catering for about 500,000 people. I mean, these are things and statistics that are real and easy to verify. So these are the things that we need. And yet, these people come from the West and they lie to the African countries and they say what you need is abortion. Now you introduce abortion into this mix, and what happens? The activists walk away, the lobbyists walk away, and the African women will continue to die. But on the one hand, they have actually achieved what they want. So my appeal is always to people in the West to tell the Africans the truth, and come with the real values and the gains that you already have. You have the excellent healthcare here in Ireland, in the UK, in the US. Why don't you offer us that? You offer us the benefits of the excellent healthcare facilities that you have, but instead all they have to offer to us, or the main thing that most of these Western ideologues have to offer to us, is abortion. And it does reek of how do you say, what I call philanthropic racism. It also does reek of a lot of selfishness. It's like you keep the good things to yourself, but that which is most contested within your own domains, that's what you're actually ready to share with people.
So really what we need to do is see an attention and a focus on the fundamental healthcare issues and deal with those, rather than foisting abortion as a solution. Let's move on to something more positive, and the US, which is, we have all had a great boost from the news from the US about the decision of Roe versus Wade, the overturning. What do you think are the opportunities that exist for the pro-life movement now in a post-Roe world? I know viewers of this program are really interested in this, because ever since the Roe versus Wade decision, we've had a number of conversations around it, and it's given us, particularly in Ireland, the fact that we've had abortion introduced in the last few years, a real shot in the arm. It's been a real boost. So what would you think are the opportunities that are there for the pro-life movement post-Roe?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time that now we're now going to be ready to go forward with more courage. You see what the Americans have done right, that the Americans the American pro-life politicians, the American pro-life activists, they have no apologies, and they have no, they are not ashamed to stand as pro-life people and then still say we can be pro-life, and then we are pro-science, we're pro-woman, we are doing everything possible in order to help women who are in need. And so they've of course had this exceptional and excellent victory. So what I'm hoping for in a post-Roe world is the fact that their enthusiasm the effervescence within their own pro-life movement can actually pour into other places like Ireland and other parts of the world. The fact also that we can then, removing abortion from the mix, especially from some of these American states that are pro-life, we can then see clearly, just like, to allude a little bit to what we had talked about earlier, we can then see clearly to what really helps women and what women really need. Because without abortion in the mix, we can then see maternal health care, we can take care of the real business of taking care of pregnant women and their babies, and then we can replicate that, because if you can see that women can still do well, we can have very good maternal health care outcomes without abortion. So yes, we can actually try to spread that around the world, especially in parts of the world where abortion has not been legalized and they don't want to legalize abortion, and people are coming with the lie that if you legalize abortion, things are going to be better. We will have somewhere to look, because of course we now no longer have Ireland. We cannot make a reference to the kind of healthcare outcomes we have in Ireland, because now you have abortion. But America, thank God, it's now another sort of an open opportunity for us to see properly how innovative ways how we can help pregnant women, help women in pregnancies, crisis pregnancy situations, help women in post-delivery situations, and take care of the real medical advancements. I'm really looking forward to that, without abortion destroying all that that is good within medical advancements.
And it's interesting that in America, I suppose, there's a huge focus from within the pro-life movement on practical support for women in unplanned pregnancy, and helping women with crisis pregnancy resource centres, at abortion clinics, etc. And we often hear, and we see on social media, about lives that have been saved. I think it's really something maybe that should be developed more in other countries and in other pro-life movements, to have more of that to the forefront, that we're pro-life in every sense, and assisting mothers. Do you think that the movement in America is it's very well organized? We have a lot of very committed people. It's very positive. And if that could be replicated, so there's this kind of a tipping point of pro-life activism where it's acceptable to be involved, compared to places like Ireland, where it's quite difficult to be a pro-life activist at the moment. Is that something that, in terms of an opportunity post-Roe, we should try and develop in other countries, especially in Europe? Or is that something that...
Well, absolutely, because what doing well. Within the pro-life movement, you have a lot of amazing people. You have people who are, I think, some of the most generous people I've met in my lifetime. I have met them within the pro-life movement. Some of the kindest people I've met them within the pro-life movement. But what we need also, in addition to all that exceptional love within the pro-life movement, is the pursuance of professionalism. We need more professionals to be able to also come into this movement. We need to welcome people. We need to, kind of not just welcome, but we need to attract this, like, high practicing professionals, lawyers, doctors, people in various walks of life to come into our movement and help the women, pregnant women, women in crisis pregnancy. And that's what you have in the United States. You have a movement that is very well organized, very enthusiastic, of course, that has all the love that love is never lacking in the pro-life movement, I tell you. Love is never lacking. But sometimes what we lack is just the resources and the kind of high professionalism that you need to get this movement to stand shoulder to shoulder with other movements, if you see what I mean. So it's one that has also been very difficult, because in most of these Western countries, in a place like Ireland, it will be hard to be like a high-flying lawyer who is unapologetically pro-life, or a very highly accomplished doctor and be unapologetically pro-life. There is always some kind of attack against you to either make it so that pro-life people would look like we are stupid, or we're not professionals, or we cannot be professional and pro-life at the same time. But I want this world where we can merge the two, because what doing well. I want to see more professionals, and that's what we see in the United States. And I think that also kind of is responsible, or could have been responsible for the kind of successes that you have within the movement. I also think people should be, ordinary people who perhaps are not very activists in nature. I think they should just kind of have the heart to support the pro-life movement. If you are pro-life and you have this thing within your mind where you understand that, of course, more than anything, life should be protected at every stage and phase of development, but then you do not want to be activist, fine. Then please give to the pro-life movement. Please sponsor the pro-life movement. That those who cannot, give can go. Those who cannot go can give. So it's that kind of a situation. I think I'm working a lot with the American pro-life movement. I've seen a lot of that. That sometimes it's the people who do not necessarily want to get involved in activism who give as much as they can or as much as is possible to the movement, because this is a very important human rights movement. It should be taken as such. It should be considered as such, and it should get the kind of support that it needs to be able to stand, because we do have to stand on something. And a lot of love is great, but we also need to be able to afford the kind of professionals and the level of professionalism which is needed within a movement to make it formidable that will carry us into the future.
Absolutely agreed. And I think it's really interesting what you've said about just professionalizing the pro-life movement. And, it's amazing to see so many amazing pro-life organizations all over the world. But it's a challenge to do that. And obviously there's resources and all of those issues, but we need to really look at the US, see what they've done, and try and kind of emulate that in other parts of the world and replicate. So that's a real challenge for us, but it's absolutely really worthwhile and important. Just in terms of your own activism, so you're a massive activist, you've travelled all over the world, far and wide, you've seen the good and the bad, you've worked with at the UN level, with other, internationally. What makes you hopeful that the tide will turn? What keeps you going? Yeah. And how do you see, ultimately, we believe that life will be protected again in law.
Yes.
So what are your own kind of views on how that will happen? How do you, keep motivated around that?
Of course. So in let's say my professional life, I work as a scientist, biomedical scientist. So I do work in the healthcare system and healthcare services. And the one thing that I have seen over the years, I have been in this industry for about 20 years now. Much of my life I have been working as a healthcare professional, and I have seen incredible advances within the healthcare, in the world of healthcare provision and healthcare advancements. I have seen such advancements that I know for a fact that surely especially how all things like ultrasound are going, and then how you see women are being cared for in pregnancy, how you see babies are being born earlier and earlier within pregnancy and gestational ages. I know that the advancement at some point is going to have to overtake the barbarism of abortion, that people who are, committing these abortions, and on the one side, you have, fetal surgeries where even within the womb, doctors are having to operate on babies to correct spina bifida and things like that. So I know that one day the science will surely have to be confronted by the practice, the barbaric practice that is abortion. That gives me hope. I also have worked with a lot of young people and seen young people in various countries, and I know that there is indeed a genuine desire to protect the most vulnerable, to protect the weakest, to protect the smallest. And so if that is the case, there is just that zeal. And then on the one hand, we are seeing these babies, we are seeing the baby photos, we are seeing the ultrasound pictures, we are getting science, revealing more and more to us about the humanity of the baby in the womb, even at earlier and earlier stages, I believe that one day the young people will rise, that the coming generation will definitely see that there is no way we can be doing a surgery, a cardiac surgery on a baby in the womb, and at the same time being able to kill that baby while in the womb. So there is a lot of hope out there because the advancements continue irrespective of the darkness that has come from within the abortion movement and the lies that they are trying to propagate and things that have kind of grown over the last half a century up to where it is now. The time is coming. The time is coming when the true and the good will have to confront that which is evil and deadly and has cost so many lives that, one day it will happen. And we've seen a lot of human rights abuses over time and what has happened in history. We've seen what happened with slavery. Myself as a Black person, slavery is something that I have taught a lot about. And of course, without much difficulty, I have compared it with abortion, and I've seen the similarities between what happened during the days of slavery, the laws that were involved in order to make it possible, the kind of propaganda that had to go into it in order to make it possible, the very difficult position people were put in, and the persecution that would have happened around those who were trying to abolish slavery. And I see that in a way, I compare it in a way to what is happening within the pro-life movement, to pro-life activists, to pro-life people, and what is happening in our world. And I know that, yes, if I myself as a Black person at this point in time, because of the work people have done to abolish what was before, that I can stand and I can talk freely and I can be in any society and talk to anybody and conduct business and do whatever, I know that indeed one day the humanity of the baby in the womb will be recognized, that they too are equal, babies and human of equal right and dignity and what as anybody else. So I'm very hopeful.
And you're so right. I mean, the humanity, the window to the womb is probably one of the most influential things that's happened in the last half a century in terms of really people realizing that this is a human being. Thank you so much for being with us, Uju. You have over 130,000 followers on Twitter.
If they let me.
You're an incredible digital activist as well. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And for anybody who'd like to follow Uju, you can follow her Twitter account, Obianuju Ekeocha on Twitter, and see more about what she's getting up to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Eilís.